Ever feel like someone should shake up storytelling? Like, ditch the rule book?
I see where you're going with this.
Well, get ready, because today we're diving into modernism.
Those literary rebels who redefine how stories get told.
Exactly. Proust, Joyce, Woolf, all those heavy hitters.
They changed how we see the world, even ourselves.
And our guide for this wild ride is, you gotta know, these modernist authors. Get ready for some serious aha moments.
These writers, they weren't just telling tales. They were wrestling with massive change.
What do you mean?
Imagine living through world wars, seeing psychoanalysis emerge. Like, hello, the mind is a weird place, social structures crumbling left and right.
Heavy stuff.
Their writing, it becomes this lens, we can peek into those seismic shifts.
It's like a time capsule, but one that still speaks to us now. So how do we even define modernism? It's more than just old books, right?
Way more. Think of it as art rebelling against the rules. It's experimental, breaking free, finding new ways to express what it means to be human.
I'm hooked already. Where do we start? We've got a whole lineup of authors in this source.
Each with their own unique flavor.
Up first, we've got Proust. 7 volumes about lost time, all triggered by a cookie. Okay, you have my attention. What's his deal?
Proust was obsessed with memory. The way our senses, a taste, a scent, could unlock hidden memories, deep emotions. Think about that Madeleine dipped in tea.
Ah, yes.
That's Proust showing us how even the smallest thing can unearth a flood of experiences.
I'm picturing those long, winding sentences he's known for.
Trying to capture how our minds really work. Stream of consciousness, he called it. Unfiltered thoughts, feelings, all pouring out. Revolutionary. Before him, you didn't get that raw intimacy in literature.
So no straightforward stories. We're in the thick of a character's mind from the get-go.
Right into the messy brilliance of it. For a taste of Proust, Swann's Way, first volume of In Search of Lost Time. That's your starting point.
Noted. Okay, from memory lane, we're jumping to the avant-garde. Gertrude Stein, synonymous with early 20th century Paris. What made her such a force?
Picture her salon, 27 Rue de Fleurus, buzzing with the biggest names. Picasso, Hemingway, Matisse. Drawn to her sharp mind, her daringly different approach to language.
Her writing, though, it can be a little repetitive at times. Rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. Help me out here.
That line, that's Stein in a nutshell. Words stripped bare, reduced to pure essence. You're not just skimming for meaning, you're confronting the word's sound, its shape.
Experiencing language on a whole other level. Still pretty radical, even now.
Absolutely. She wanted to shatter the rules of grammar. And her impact wasn't just literary. Her ideas about art, language, they were born in that salon, influenced generations.
The ultimate influencer, but for, like, high-minded stuff.
Precisely. So where should our listeners start with Stein? The autobiography of Alice B. Toklas is a good entry point.
Stein writing about herself.
Well, from the perspective of her partner, Alice. Witty, insightful, a peek into their world.
Okay, I'm adding that to the list. Now, from bustling Paris to, well, this is different, Wallace Stevens. Insurance executive by day, poet by night.
Talk about a double life.
What's his story?
Stevens found the extraordinary in the ordinary. Saw beauty everywhere, even in his insurance job.
Not sure my own paperwork is that inspiring.
But he made it sing. His poems, they're vivid, musical, a deep appreciation for the senses.
Our source mentions 13 ways of looking at a blackbird. I mean, that title alone screams modernist. What's so special about that one?
It's Stevens' whole approach right there. You get 13 different views of this one image. Each view reveals another layer of meaning. He makes you question your assumptions, see the world anew.
Even the mundane can be profound if you really pay attention. If someone's ready to explore Stevens, where should they begin?
Harmonium, his collection. You'll find gems like The Emperor of Ice Cream, Sunday Morning, poems that stick with you.
Adding it to the ever-growing list. Now we can't forget Virginia Woolf, a true icon.
A master of stream of consciousness, and such a powerful voice for women in a very male world.
Mrs. Dalloway, her novel, it's a classic. Just one day in this woman's life, right?
Deceptively simple. We journey through Clarissa Dalloway's mind. Anxieties, memories, perceptions. But Woolf weaves her story with Septimus myths.
He's the World War I vet.
Yes, grappling with trauma.
Powerful stuff. A book way ahead of its time when it comes to mental health.
Woolf's willingness to go there to explore those inner lives. Groundbreaking. And A Room of One's Own, her essay, required reading.
Where she imagines Shakespeare with a sister, right?
Equally talented but denied the same opportunities. Poignant. How societal expectations stifle creativity.
It makes you think. Now, if you want a Woolf novel that truly pushes boundaries, Orlando.
Spans centuries, bends gender, explores identity, self-discovery.
Gender bending and time travel. Okay, now I have to read that one. Speaking of pushing boundaries, James Joyce, the mind behind the notoriously complex Ulysses. Is it as tough as they say?
It can be, yeah, but so rewarding. It all unfolds on one day in Dublin, June 16, 1904.
Bloomsday. I knew that. There's a whole day celebrating the book. What makes it so special?
It's a testament to how much Joyce's work endures. Ulysses, it's this tapestry of language, myth, everyday life. He takes stream of consciousness even further than Woolf.
And it's all a modernist take on Homer's Odyssey, right?
Ambitious.
Incredibly. He takes that epic journey and maps it onto Leopold Bloom wandering through Dublin. It's celebrating language, diving deep into the mind, a love letter to his city.
You've convinced me to give it another try. Should someone new to Joyce start with Ulysses? Maybe dip your toes in with his short stories. Dubliners. Or A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, his earlier novel. You get a feel for his style, his incredible portrayals of Irish life.
Great advice. Okay, from the streets of Dublin to, well, this is a little scandalous, D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's lover. Caused quite the stir back in the day.
Oh, absolutely. Downright scandalous, exploring sexuality, class hypocrisy, banned in several places for decades.
Banned? It was so shocking.
Okay, so it's a love story. Lady Chatterley, upper class, trapped in loveless marriage. Oliver Mellors, the gamekeeper. But it's more than just an affair. It challenges these rigid class structures in early 20th century England. And those sexual boundaries, forget about it.
So Lawrence wasn't just trying to be provocative. There was a deeper point.
Exactly. He was advocating for something more liberated, more authentic, embracing the physical and emotional. Radical, then. It sparked these huge debates about censorship, freedom of expression, the place of sexuality in art.
It's amazing how art can do that, you know, force these conversations. Is Lady Chatterley's Lover the only Lawrence novel worth reading?
Oh, no, not at all. Sons and Lovers, The Rainbow, Women in Love, they all delve into similar themes. Love, desire, those social constraints.
It's fascinating how these modernist authors, they just weren't afraid to tackle the big, messy questions, even if it ruffled some feathers.
They were determined to understand the modern world, all its complexities. And their art. It's what sparked the conversation.
And that's why it still matters today. We'll be back in a moment with more on these literary rebels. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back with more modernist masterpieces. Before the break, we were getting into all the drama with D.H. Lawrence, but let's move on to another giant of the movement, Ezra Pound.
Pound. Now there's a complex figure. Huge influence on shaping modern poetry.
But his personal life.
Yeah.
Those politics.
Yeah, can't ignore that.
The elephant in the room, as they say.
Exactly.
But sticking with his writing, he's mainly known for imagism, right?
Spot on. Clarity, precision. Imagine if a traditional poem is a painting, an imagist poem. It's a photograph, a snapshot, a few powerful details.
And Pound was all about those short, impactful poems.
Like a station of the metro, remember that one?
Vaguely. It's incredibly short, right?
Yeah.
2 lines. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough.
Wow. And those 2 lines just explode with meaning.
That unexpected connection, right? Faces in the subway, and suddenly you're seeing petals.
Like those images are forever linked in your mind. He's so visual with language.
Pound believed in stripping it down to the most potent form. Vivid imagery, rhythm, sound. Poetry should be an experience.
He definitely achieved that, even with the personal baggage. For someone wanting to explore his work, where do they start?
The Cantos, his epic poem, sprawling, complex, reflects all his fascinations. History, literature, culture.
Intense. Maybe not a quick read.
Probably not. But it shows you Pound's ambition, how far he wanted to push poetry.
Duly noted. Okay, we can't talk modernism without T.S. Eliot.
Eliot. His mark on 20th century poetry is massive. He captured that feeling after World War I. The disillusionment, the fragmentation.
The Wasteland. One of the most important works of modernism, period. What makes it so powerful, even now?
It's complex. Challenging, for sure. But so powerful. He brings together myth, symbolism, all these different voices. It's raw, honest, a picture of what it meant to be human after the war.
Read it in college, felt lost, captivated, all at once.
That's Eliot for you. He doesn't shy away from the difficult stuff, makes you confront the brokenness of the world. That search for meaning when things feel meaningless.
And the lines from it, they stick with you. Our source even mentions some. April is the cruelest month. I will show you fear in a handful of dust.
He could say so much in so few words. Profound truths, but so concise. Unforgettable. The wasteland is full of them.
What's wild is he wrote lighter stuff, too. Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. That's T.S. Eliot. Same guy.
One and the same. Talk about range.
Yeah.
Deeply philosophical, then playfully whimsical.
And that book inspired the musical Cats. Talk about a legacy.
Right. Though Cats aside, Eliot's influence is huge. Want to go deeper? The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, The Hollow Men, Four Quartets, all great places to start.
Profound poetry to cat verses, he really did it all. Okay, next up, a poet known for a very distinct style. E. Cummings. He's the one who loved messing with capitalization.
A one and only. A true original. Bent those grammar rules, played with how things looked on the page, really explored the music of language.
The rebel of poetry, tossing out the rulebook and saying, I make my own rules.
Something like that. And you know what? It worked. You always know a Cummings poem when you see it. Playful, often romantic, this infectious love for language shines through. He wanted us to really see a poem, hear it differently.
The source mentions anyone lived in a pretty how town. I mean, that title alone makes you stop and think.
Cummings loved turning language upside down, making us see everyday things in a new light. That poem, it's about love, loss, time passing, but told in his totally unique way.
So he wasn't just being different to be different, it was all in service of the art.
Exactly. He was after new ways to express the human experience.
Yeah.
And he did it on his own terms.
I respect that. What's a good starting point for someone new to E. Cummings?
His collected poems, you'll get the full range. Love poems, social commentary, all in his style. He also wrote a novel, The Enormous Room, about his time as an ambulance driver in World War I. More experimental than his poems, but definitely worth a read.
Okay, last but not least on our modernist lineup, we have Hart Crane and his epic poem, The Bridge. Gotta admit, I'm not as familiar with his work.
Crane's a fascinating one. He was captivated by America, its potential, its energy. And for him, the Brooklyn Bridge, it embodied all that.
He found poetry in steel and concrete. That's a unique view.
He saw it as the symbol of human ambition, achievement. But Crane, he was also battling his own demons. Addiction, heartbreak. Tragically, he took his own life young.
That's always so sad to hear. Did those struggles come out in his writing?
Absolutely. The Bridge, his most ambitious poem, it's dense, challenging, but it's also full of incredible imagery, this really powerful emotional core. The bridge becomes this metaphor for America history, that search for connection in a world that's changing so fast.
Sounds like it really embodies that modernist spirit, trying to understand ourselves, our place, when everything's in flux.
Exactly. And his language, it matches the ambition of his themes, symbolism, myth, experimental techniques. It's a one-of-a-kind reading experience.
The Bridge, quite the journey. But before we wander too far, from Proust's Madeleines to Hart Crane's Bridge, we've covered some serious ground. Modernism, man, what a ride.
And we've only just dipped our toes in, really. So much more out there. But you're right, we've covered a lot. What stands out to you from this deep dive?
Their boldness. These writers, they weren't afraid to experiment, to break the mold, tackle the tough stuff. War, sexuality, identity. That search for meaning when the world's changing so fast, it's all still relevant.
Isn't it remarkable they were grappling with the big questions almost a century ago, and here we are, still wrestling with those same questions?
Exactly. It's like those dusty old books, they're more alive than ever. Okay, so for our listeners who are inspired, but maybe a little overwhelmed, where should they start?
That's the best part. So many entry points.
Yeah.
But I'd recommend Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. Beautifully written, explores memory, loss, the messiness of human relationships. Plus, a glimpse into women's lives back then.
Classic for a reason, right?
Exactly.
Okay, last question before we wrap things up. If these modernist writers were around now, what boundaries would they be pushing? What would their version of the wasteland or Ulysses look like in the 21st century?
Now that's a question. Imagine Joyce trying to wrap his head around the internet. Or Stein experimenting with, like, emojis and internet slang.
The possibilities are endless.
Nearly.
It proves that the heart of modernism, that drive to challenge, innovate, find new ways to express ourselves, it never gets old.
And it's something we can all tap into, whether we're writing novels, composing music, even just trying to understand our own lives.
Beautifully said. So, to our listeners, go explore. Pick up a modernist masterpiece, see what speaks to you. And who knows, maybe this deep dive will spark your own creativity. Maybe we'll be featuring your work someday. But until then, happy reading.